How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
1990 was a wild, interesting time. The Cold War was nearing an end. The Berlin Wall was torn down and people were still playing Battletech and Transformers. So, throw all of that into a giant blender, throw in some rah-rah corny dialogue, and some robot combat that makes you actually appreciate the Pacific Rim sequel. And you get a dish best served by this show. It's time to see if Robot Jox is not that bad. Welcome, one and all, to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies, and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Hello to all of our listeners in Johannesburg, South Africa, and around the world. How are you guys doing? All right. We've gone down this road before, where you take a film that you watched when you were growing up, and you're like, how does this qualify? This was like a pivotal movie from my childhood. I remember this, remember it well. And then you go back and you watch it and you realize why it does qualify, but yet I'm still here to defend my childhood. And here to join me, returning once again to the show, Matt Larder is back. Man, how you doing, man?
I am doing great, Jason. Thanks again so much for having me. It's great to be back. Had a ton of fun the first time out, and I'm excited to do it again.
You see, the last time you were here, we were talking about the Lord of the Rings animated movie. And this was another one where it's like you go back to that early childhood. That was a core memory for you. And now we're going to a core memory for me. Big ass robots going punchy punch all the way through the film. We're talking about Robot Jox. So I will admit that I threw this at you like a hand grenade into the kiddie pool. Your thoughts on this initially?
Oh man, honestly, there were some parts of it I really enjoyed. Like the plot in itself, for the most part, I liked. Like the story was, I mean, maybe a little bit generic for what it ended up being, but I did really like it. And when I think about maybe the animation or the what they had in the 90s to make movies, I appreciated certain elements of it. So there were definitely parts of it I liked. Other parts that were a little bit tougher to get through. But I think on a whole, it was less bad than I thought it was going to be going in.
All right. I have to ask, though, had you seen this film before actually watching it for the show?
No, I hadn't.
Because clearly you have better taste than I do. But yeah, so for me, this was, again, I remember when this was on the movie networks and I watched it ad nauseum. I was probably in my teens at that point in time. So it was one of those things where I remember this film and I remember it well. And yes, I've said it before. I was a Transformers kid growing up. I played Battletech. So this movie kind of played to everything that I was into at the time. So it felt like it was tailor-made for me to do on this show.
It was a fun suggestion when you handed it to me. I said, give me an action movie, and you threw this one at me. It was definitely a fun one.
I remember showing you the trailer too, and it's like, oh, we're doing that. Okay, I'll go down that road.
Yeah, let's do it.
You gotta love a guest who just says, I'm here for the ride. I don't care how bumpy the ride is going to be. All right. We're about to talk about 1990s Robot Jox. But before we do, it is time to take this movie and trailerize it.
In the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust, open war is no more. Instead, we get the futuristic equivalent of gladiatorial combat, complete with spectators, missiles, lasers, and a chainsaw dick. Yes, I said that right. This is the world of Robot Jox. Brave pilots contractually obligated to play the ultimate game of Rock'em Sock'em Robots, with territories on the line, resources up for grabs, and clearly no HR department in sight. On a collision course are Achilles and Alexander. The answer to the question, what if Jean-Claude Van Damme was divided into two people, with one getting the accent and the other getting the acting skills? It's a movie depicting a future where everyone wears masks. Food is so expensive that a single hot dog is considered a delicacy. And wait, how did they know what would happen 30 years later? It's Robot Jox, rated PG for plastic gladiators.
I love that.
Oh man, oh man, oh man. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like you were saying there, you watch this like, why is everyone wearing masks? And it feels very, very. Now, admittedly, this is supposed to be like a post-nuclear war kind of environment. They kind of briefly touch on it, but I'm like, wow, everyone looks like they were walking around in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they start off the movie saying it's post-apocalypse, but they never really talk about what the apocalypse was. And they also go into, war is now outlawed. They got it. The first thing that I thought of at the time was, isn't war actually outlawed? Like, I mean, I know what happens, but like war is still kind of war and it's still kind of bad, right? Like they made a point of saying, don't do it in the movie.
I'm assuming the apocalypse kind of hit the United Nations, because that would have messed up a bunch of things. But I mean, the funny thing is, when you think about movies in like the 80s, nuclear war was like, look at a movie like Threads. Look at a movie like Countdown to Looking Glass. Like there were so many. The world was coming to an end films. Clearly, people like to watch the absolute worst in movies for some weird, sick reason. But yet here we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that still holds true today, too. It's just what people are afraid of most is shifted, right? And it makes sense that at the time was in the forefront of everybody's minds. And it's maybe a different, people love a good horror movie and a good, it's all, murder documentaries and disappearing people now. But at the time, it was, nuclear war. So it makes sense in that respect what the premise of the movie was going to be.
Yeah, and if anyone's ever watched Threads, just don't. I mean, it's a good film. Just don't. Save yourself. But let's get into this movie. The movie stars Gary Graham, Anne Marie Johnson, Paul Koslow, Robert Sampson, Danny Kamekona, Michael Aldridge, and Hilary Mason. There is actually an almost starring for this one. And the funny thing is, I just said all those actors' names and you've probably never heard of a single one of them.
I had not.
Almost cast in the role of Achilles was actually Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, you're kidding.
Like, and you're sitting there, you're watching Gary Graham. It's like, yeah, you kind of feel like you're channeling your inner JCVD here. But yet it was almost the Van Daminator as Achilles.
It's interesting that you bring him up off the top. I thought for the longest time, and I looked it up after to see if I was right, because I went into the movie blind. Gary Graham looked to me like a young Billy Bob Thornton. And for the longest time, I was trying to figure out if this was actually who that was. They looked very similar, and I was trying to figure that out.
If Billy Bob Thornton and Jean-Claude Van Damme had a love child, it's Gary Graham.
That's exactly it.
Vanessa Williams actually auditioned for the role of Athena, but wasn't able to do the film. Gladys Porteous was also considered for the role. The movie was directed by Stuart Gordon. Prior to this, he had actually directed Reanimator, and he was the writer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So for somehow you go from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids to Robot Jox. Okay.
It's a bit of a step, right? I mean, a Rick Moranis film everybody loves.
To a film that barely anyone knows. Okay.
Bit of a step.
This movie was originally supposed to release earlier, but it was delayed because Empire Pictures, the company that was putting this together, had gone bankrupt during production. This was actually the most expensive film that Empire Pictures was working on, with a budget of $10 million. When it was eventually released on the November 23rd, 1990 weekend, it debuted at number 13 with only $464,000. The top film that week was Home Alone in its second week with $20 million. The highest grossing debut that week was Three Men and a Little Lady, which debuted at number 2 with $13.7 million. Also debuting that week was Predator 2 and the Nutcracker Prince. All in all, this film only made $1.2 million worldwide, but there were some accolades for this. At the 1990 Fantasporto International Fantasy Film Awards, it was nominated for Best Film, but lost to Black Rainbow starring Rosanna Arquette. Now, before you get confused here, also released in 1990 was a movie called Crash and Burn, which starred Bill Moseley and Megan Ward, which also featured big-ass giant robots, which is weird because Crash and Burn, you know how like in theater, when everyone says break a leg, here they say Crash and Burn. So they're actually using the break a leg ism, if you will, as a film title. And it's not even a sequel. It's not even related. But yeah, the funny thing is, Crash and Burn in some markets was actually promoted as Robot Jox 2. So the lines were very, very, very blurred. But the reason why we are here, of course, are the critics. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, this film has a tomatometer of 40% with a popcorn meter of 42. At IMDb, it sits at 5.5 stars out of 10 for a 55% score. At Letterboxd, it sits at 2.9 stars out of 5 for a 58% score. And at the Movie Database, sits at 55 for an aggregate right on the money at 50%. So as I say 50% to you, are you surprised that it's actually that high?
I mean, part of me wants to say yes, but part of me also wants to say big ass robots. Right? I mean, for all the flaws that the movie might have had, it also had big ass robots and all kinds. It had a robot fist that shot out at one point, and just I don't know how many other movies. I mean, you talked about the one Crash and Burn that also had big ass robots, but I don't know how many other big robots were around at the time. So I want to give it credit for that, for the other faults that it may have had. So 50% to me seems in that way a little bit. Yeah, I kind of see it.
Also, by the way, in 1993, there was a film that came out called Robot Wars, which kind of was the sequel to Robot Jox. However, that being said, by the way, here's where the spoilers begin. So I'm going to give you a moment to just pause. Go ahead, pop on over to Prime Video. Robot Jox is on there. Go ahead and watch the film. And now that you've come back, Danny Kamekona, whose character dies in this film, is in Robot Wars playing a completely different person.
That's like Jonah Hill playing two different people in all the Snow movies and forgetting Sarah Marshall and Get Into the Greek.
I mean, anyone who watches Doctor Who knows the one who played Martha Jones, who was the companion during David Tennant's second season as the Doctor. appeared in an episode of the previous year as a completely different person. And then also during Tennant's run with Catherine Tate, there was an episode called The Fires of Pompeii. And in that episode appeared both Karen Gillan, who would go on to be Amy Pond during the Matt Smith years, and Peter Capaldi, who would be the 12th Doctor, playing in different roles. So not unheard of, I guess.
It's sometimes it's kind of fun when you notice it happens sometimes like that. Like I think of a couple examples. They did that in the show Community as well, with Paget Brewster's character, who appeared as like a random tech lady in I think season 5, and then had an actual role in season 6, and they had this little fun thing where they pretended that didn't happen. But it's interesting that it happened in this one and the semi-sequel as well.
Well, see, now that you say that, in Community, of course, basically homage Doctor Who all the time with their Inspector Spacetime. They did, yeah. Yeah.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior, and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and Michelob Ultra is getting you closer to the game than ever with courtside seats and more. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access Courtside 2024 to 2025 sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Ends on July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/superior access/courtside for free entry deadlines and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
All right, well, before we start diving into Doctor Who talk, as we're prone to do here, let's get into this film. We're going to start with Gary Graham, who played Achilles. Your thoughts on him?
I mean, I thought he did decently well. He was one of the few characters in the film that I thought had personality. Granted, I recognize a lot of the other characters were what they called tubies and were kind of, kind of sold as, robot humans in that kind of way, test tube babies. So I thought his performance was decent. And he had some personality, which I did kind of enjoy.
I mean, when you think back to the 80s, and keep in mind, too, this film was being made in the 80s, didn't get released till 1990. You think about like the American Ninja films and films of that ilk, and you had a lot of performances like this, very, tough, rah-rah American, I'm going to kick your ass, and like pointed like you mean it kind of thing. Like, it really was a very 80s kind of performance. And the film does have a lot of 80s sensibilities in it, so there are some problematic things about Achilles. But we have to remember, this is a smaller company, $10 million budget film. And you have to think that a lot of the money went into the stop motion animation for the robots. We're going to get to that. And trust me when I say we're going to be singing praises here. But the thing is, I don't know what you want. Like, if you had put Jean-Claude Van Damme in this role, it's going to look about as bad as Street Fighter.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Which I think he probably had some of the same lines in Street Fighter. But the thing is, Jean-Claude Van Damme is a, kick-ass martial arts expert. No problem. No worries. The acting is exactly what it is. And if you like Jean-Claude Van Damme, it's all good. But I mean, Achilles is supposed to be, for lack of a better term, an American gladiatorial robot fighting champion. You're going to put the muscles from Brussels in there. It's going to sound a little weird.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I did have a good laugh at the few hand-to-hand combat scenes that they had, especially the training scenes earlier. Just I've done a little bit of stunt acting as well myself, and kind of watching those those scenes shot. Again, like you said, it would have been in the '80s, so you have to appreciate that for the time it was. But those those did give me a little bit of a laugh.
Well, that's the thing too. Again, looking back at 80s films, a lot of those fight scenes, it's like one camera and you can see they kind of choreo the entire fight scene. The camera, yes, it moves around, but you're not doing this isn't an Avengers film. You know, we're not taking 15 different angles while Scarlett Johansson does a scissor kick around somebody. This was like one camera and you saw everything choreographed as it should be, but it looks very choreographed. But again, like if you grew up in the 80s, this wasn't out of the question. Like there were a lot of like canon films did this all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the trope of one enemy runs at a guy at a time, which you kind of see in the training sequences, which is, again, it's something that I recognize they had to work with at the time, but it always, again, just makes me chuckle.
Well, I mean, clearly war is civilized, so maybe there is something where you can only fight one person at a time. Anne Marie Johnson, who played Athena, this is, as you say, one of the 2Bs. Your thoughts on her?
Wanted to like her. I don't know if she was playing more to her role or if it was a bit more of how she was acting. She felt kind of one-dimensional. I didn't get a lot of emotion from her, even though she had a bit of an emotional connection to Gary Graham's character Achilles. She felt fairly flat from an acting point of view. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the sense that I got. I wanted to like her character, but also it was pretty obvious what role she was going to play as the movie went on.
Yeah. I mean, most of the other 2Bs were playing it very straight and unemotional. And if you're genetically created to fight, then it makes sense that these characters are very one-dimensional. As you say, they are born and bred for one purpose and one purpose alone. I like the fact, and again, we're talking about a late 80s film here, released in 1990. There's a whole lot of HR required for how Achilles reacts to Athena here. Like, but to this movie's credit, she doesn't just give in to him. Like, she is forcibly kissed once, and she is kissed while unconscious the second time. So at no point is Athena like, oh, you're so handsome and you're no. He's in your way and you're going to fight through him unless you are incapacitated. Achilles is getting called to the office, I think, in a modern day film.
Well, I think they did a good job of setting her up like it was going to lead into that at the beginning. Because at the beginning, she came off as starstruck of Achilles, and it was revealed that it was because she was, he was in her way and she was trying to overcome him. But it set it up and made you think it was going to be the generic love interest kind of thing. It didn't turn out that way, and I appreciated that, kind of twist.
Yeah, because the 2Bs, I mean, I don't even know if they really think about sex or they're bred that way. Because like there's that scene where they're all going into the shower and it's like, all right, so everyone just drop your clothes and head into the shower. At no point are any of them looking at each other. It's just like, okay, this is business.
Mm-hmm.
The movie smartly stays away from that because I think it would have gotten in the way of the story. It would have made it worse and really cheesy.
Oh, I know, I agree. And I mean, that kind of thing is so predictable, especially in movies that I saw when I was a kid. So at the beginning of it, when it was leading up to that, I was not afraid, but I was a little concerned that I was going to be able to predict that happening. And I'm pleasantly surprised that it didn't go that way.
Michael Aldridge, who played Tex, your thoughts on him?
He was fun. At a certain point, it became really obvious, and I mean, we've already done the spoilers beyond this point, so I'm gonna safely power on with my sentence. But it became pretty obvious at a certain point that he was the mole, that he was the leak. But I had fun with him as the very stereotypical, I'm Texas, I'm America, cowboy hat, and I'm going to turn out to be the bad guy, even though I'm the protagonist's best friend in the beginning. He was predictable, but fun.
I want to point out, remember, this film came out 1990. During that time, for a run from 1987 to 1993, good old JR, Jim Ross, was commentating for WCW. Because I'm watching this film, I'm like, you are like literally the Kirkland brand Jim Ross of this entire film, complete with the cowboy hat and the accent. And I just wonder if Jim Ross was like some kind of template for what Michael Aldridge was trying to do.
It did kind of feel like that, honestly. And I mean, again, I think I appreciated just how fun the character was, whether he was basing it off of him or not. It wasn't really the comic relief that you see, but he kind of acted in that way. And I appreciated a fun kind of character who, would eventually turn out to be the bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. There are two ways to look at this film. And I can't remember who said it, in an interview, but I'm kind of paraphrasing a quote here that I read. Is it an adult film for kids, or is it a kids film that adults can enjoy? And Tex kind of plays into both of that, because he is almost cartoon-like in his portrayal of Tex. I mean, like, the character's name is Tex, so clearly he's going to go full on, Southern fried.
Yeah.
And if you don't want some barbecue sauce after you're done with this, then you haven't JR'd properly here. But the thing is, if it's an adult film the kids can enjoy, then you want someone who's got an over-the-top kind of character the kids can just point to and have a good chuckle at. If it's a kids film that adults can enjoy, if they're wrestling fans, they're going to get a kick out of this as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think overall he was a really important character to have for them. And I think they did him quite well. And I like watching him. I had a good laugh. Yeah.
And I mean, like, when you get that character turn as well, too, and it's like, oh, how could you? How dare you? Right? And the reveal when the video is played, it's like, yes, this is that cool moment. And he's JR to the end. And now anyone who's listening to the show and decides to go watch Robot Jox is going to be like, I can't unsee that now.
Yeah, no, that's stuck in everybody's brain. Mine too from now on. So everybody else has to deal with it if I have to.
Yeah. The only thing missing was him saying that the robot fight was a slobber knocker.
Oh, that would have been a little over the top, but hilarious, I think.
Paul Kozlow, who played Alexander. The answer to the question, what if Iceman from Top Gun was a Soviet? Your thoughts on him?
When I first saw him, it was very obvious to me, and we've talked earlier about the political atmosphere, the global atmosphere. It was very obvious to me that it was, albeit named differently, America versus Russia or the Soviet Union, and he was stereotypical Soviet bad guy. I mean, the first thing that he did in the movie was step on a dude who surrendered, right? So he was. I hesitate to say he was a good villain. He was the obvious villain, ironically, considering what happens at the end of the movie. But it was easy for me to figure out what his stance was, which I think helped watching the movie. It didn't make it complicated.
Which is funny when you realize that he is German-born and raised in Canada.
Well, he's named Alexander, which I have to imagine based on the naming scheme, named after Alexander the Great, which also, an entirely different part of the world, although they were all kind of named after Greek, Greek entities, Greek deities, Greek heroes, Greek whatever. Albeit Alexander the Great was Macedonian, but that's a different conversation.
I didn't realize we were tuning in here for a history lesson or a world civics lesson, but here we are. But I think it's one of those things where I'm watching his portrayal, and instantly Michael Pataki, who played like the hype guy for Ivan Drago in Rocky IV, instantly I'm just thinking about that guy. And I expect him to all of a sudden look at something and go, if he loses, he loses. If he dies, he dies. Because it was that kind of character. But again, this is like the late 80s. Cold War was such a big thing. Look at the movie Red, was it Raw Deal with Schwarzenegger? No, Red Heat. It was Red Heat.
Red Heat, yeah.
Yeah. And again, Rocky IV as well. But also take a look at Red Dawn, which came out in 1984. Like, there were so many Cold War themed films in the 80s, right up there with the world's about to get blown up in a nuclear holocaust kind of movies. This kind of answered the bell for everything.
It did, and that's kind of what made it enjoyable from that point of view, right? I mean, it was relevant, right? And it was like for people who would remember what it was like at that time, it was kind of, watching it now is a little bit of, I mean, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word for looking back on an apocalyptic potential time, but you remember pieces of it, and you look back and you can recognize themes at least.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, also there was that long stretch where there were Vietnam movies coming in as well. So clearly movies like to talk about things that are on the zeitgeist of people's thoughts.
Mm.
Danny Kamakona, who played Dr. Matsumoto, your thoughts on him?
He was very Mr. Miyagi for me for parts of it. I mean, I don't want to say that just because he's a Japanese actor and a Japanese character, but he was, I liked him. I kind of knew he was going to die. But I kind of liked him as a bit of a contrast to Tex Conway's character.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is that while he's clearly, from the technology side of things, running things for we'll just call it the American side, because it's basically what it is.
That's what it was, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
They tried to hide it, but we all know it.
Yeah. America by any other name, it's still rah-rah America. But at no point did we see him working with the Tubies as well. Like, if the goal is to create the next generation of fighters for when people like Achilles hang it up after their 10 fights, why don't we see Dr. Matsumoto working more with the Tubies? That was the one aspect I think I was missing. But then again, you can put too much movie into a movie and start to lose the point, because again, if this is a film aimed at kids, but adults can like it too, or it's aimed at adults, but in a kid-friendly kind of way, like it is very much a family film-ish. But if you put too much story in, you're going to lose people along the way. And I think that's one of the things where, as much as it would have made sense to put it in, I could also see why that's one of the things that would have gone.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, I think he played the role of good guy who had to die, because somebody has to play that role. And he was, in kind of a mentor capacity. He obviously he had the plans for the new weapons, and he was the one who would, make the videos. And so that character sort of has to die, and that was kind of the role that he ended up in. But I did like the acting. I think the actor did quite a good job with the character.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, if someone's going to have to die, and the plot called for a death, it absolutely called for a death, it has to be someone that you care about. And Danny Kamakona had made Dr. Matsumoto likable enough that when that moment came, it hit. Like, it was a real solid, tense moment between Dr. Matsumoto and Tex, and it felt like the end game of a chess match. And that's actually a good thing, because this film is subtle like a hammer, but this is one of those moments where it kind of stood out as like one of the best acting moments in the whole film.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. It was well done. I thought one of the better parts of the movie, which it should have been, right? It was a tense moment. It was a pivotal moment, a turning point. What would turn into, a moment that would kind of flip the script for for Achilles, for Gary Graham's character. So I agree. I think it was very well done.
Yeah, it's that pivotal second act moment that puts everything into question. Speaking of acting, Hillary Mason, who played Professor Laplace, this is the scientist who was running the Tubies program. We didn't see much of her, but your thoughts on her?
Well, again, you mentioned you didn't see her a lot, which is a little bit harder to really have a huge opinion of her. She was very focused on what the Tubies were supposed to be. And I think I think she did a decent job for what she was supposed to be. She was kind of the elder founder of the program that, was called into question a few times. So, when she was shocked that Athena's character was kind of going off script of what she was supposed to do, I think that was decently done. But we didn't see a lot of her, so she kind of felt to me like one of those side characters who was around, introduced a couple times, but not really relevant.
I don't like to point out moments where you just sit there and go, oh. But the scene where Athena is fighting against Alexander and Professor Laplace is in the control room, like, no, someone stop. No, he's going to kill her. It's like, oh my God, please stop. Just stop. No. Because no one else is acting like that. This is a scientist. And these aren't real people. They're test tube babies. They are.
But she's acting like her whole program's going up in smoke.
And we had at no point had we seen Professor Laplace show any kind of emotion towards her creations. And again, this is asking for more movie than the movie should be giving you. But in that situation, don't have her act like that. She's a scientist. She should be analyzing the performance and maybe critiquing what's going on.
It felt to me like that moment was a way for the writers to try to make the audience care more about Athena, or care more about pulling her out of the fight, like feel emotionally connected to that. Because you're right, there wasn't a lot of build up to it, especially from her who created these Tubies, right, in the program. So it felt like it was a way for them to try to force us to feel some kind of emotion about that moment.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're trying to interject tension and peril. Maybe do it a little less. Robert Sampson, who played Commissioner Jameson, a decent performance, although slightly understated, giving everyone else kind of over the topping on this. But your thoughts on him?
I enjoyed it. I kind of like it. I tie him in with the referees of the whole thing, which I appreciated were in black and white, like hockey referee uniforms. It was interesting. I kind of liked the character existed from a commissioner of, robot fights to decide territories point of view. I think the character's existence was creative. And I mean, he felt very businessman commissioner to me. So I think for the role that he was casted, I think he did well, and he played the part well.
Yeah. A much more subdued performance when you take a look at Tex and when you take a look at the Doctor, and definitely when you take a look at Alexander. And I think you also need that too. Like, his role is not to be there to usurp or to overshadow anyone else. He's a cog in the machine and should play it as such.
I agree. And that's the sense that I got from him. Again, like I said, very, kind of suit and tie businessman, pretty plain, but he's playing his role.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing that can't be ignored in this film is the stop motion animation work that went into the robots fighting. Keeping in mind that this is, by Hollywood standards, kind of a low budget film at only $10 million, even though it was the most expensive production for Empire Pictures at the time. But your thoughts on how this film looks?
I liked the robots. And I mean, I have to remember that I can't expect, 2020's animation robots, Pacific Rim, whatever, because this movie felt kind of like, I think you alluded to it earlier, the Pacific Rim meets Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Yeah.
So for the time that it was, created, I liked the robots, and it was harder to tell that it was stop motion. I think of stop motion, and I think of the claymation, Rudolph movie and stuff like that. Stuff that you can visually see if you watch hard enough. It was harder to tell watching this movie that it was done that way, and I think that's a credit to the animation.
Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up and watching the original Clash of the Titans with all that Ray Harryhausen stop motion work. And it's like, that to me just captured my imagination. And the same thing with this too, because the robots looked and walked like robots. This wasn't some bad late 80s kind of wannabe, like you take a look at something like the Fox animation shows, like from like the early 90s, and like some of the forced computer graphics that they put in there, or just go watch The Lawnmower Man. Ugh. Like admittedly, this film doesn't have Jurassic Park money. Even though that only came out in 1993, so there's a 3-year difference in the release window, and Jurassic Park's budget, correct me if I'm wrong, is about $63 million only. Now, you're adjusting for inflation, of course.
Sure, of course.
Plus, you also have Industrial Light and Magic working on Jurassic Park and not on something like this. But the care was clearly given to making this look as good as it possibly could. And I think that there's a reason why Robot Jox has kind of become a bit of a cult classic, because for all its acting hits and misses, for whatever you want out of a film like this, the robot combat looked pretty darn good, even though the chainsaw dick is a little bit laughable.
I honestly, I was a little surprised when I saw it come out. I laughed and questioned it at the same time. But I want to give them credit for creativity, right? The creative, the chainsaw dick, the fist that flies out, the other things they did for different kind of creative weapons with the robots, I really enjoyed. And that might just be, the part of my brain that goes, robots, boom, explosions, But I did appreciate it. And I think their creativity deserves credit as well.
Yeah. But also, I'm glad you brought up Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim is absolutely beloved. The sequel, maybe not so much. But Pacific Rim felt like it was to scale. This film also felt like it was to scale when you realize they're working with like miniature models and doing stop motion animation, and yet they make it feel like these are giant machines in comparison to the people around them. Like when the spectators get crushed by Achilles, it's like it looks like they were crushed by a giant robot. Like the scale is real.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And it was something that stood out to me as a definitely a bright spot in the movie is how well they did that. Sometimes you can see when you watch a movie that it's a small scale model, or, a small scale of a city or a castle or robots or whatever. And it never really felt like it in this one.
Yeah. And also too, like at no point did it feel like really cheesy green screen. Like I have watched some bad movies and the green screen looks so horrible and so bad. This film felt, for lack of a better term, it felt tangible. And I think that's the beauty part about stop motion animation, is that you have these very cool, very intricate robot models that they're working with. So when you're watching it, it looks real. It looks not fake. And that carries a long, long way. Take a look at Howard the Duck, probably the most classic example of a cult classic there is out there. But yet Howard looks fantastic because you had people in the suit and you had people working like animatronic kind of controls in the face. Like there was a lot of work that went into making Howard the Duck look real and look fascinating. Like look like an actual character. So you're not just sitting there going, oh, look, it's a dude wearing a bad suit. right?
Mm-hmm.
Howard the Duck showed that you put the money into the costume and the animatronics and whatever you need to be, then it can feel like a real character that's somehow going to get Leah Thompson. Here, hey, she's the one who calls that scene out too, but hey.
Yeah, it's a lucky duck.
Right? But here you have real looking robots going toe to toe. The combat is very much a Battletech style combat. And if you ever play Battletech, it's turn-based strategy with big ass giant robots. It is almost exactly like this. So the fact that these robots are kind of playing chess with each other with the different weapons that they have, long range weapons, short range weapons. If you played Battletech, you are probably a Robot Jox fan for that very reason.
No, I agree. And as someone who didn't play Battletech, I mean, it's something that I might want to go take a look at now because it's, I mean, if it's something like that, then it might be something I'd enjoy because I did enjoy the robot combat in this film. Again, you know, it being the time that it was created in the late 80s, excuse me. I thought it was done pretty well. And again, as somebody watching it in 2025, I had fun with it.
Well, the other thing too with Battletech is that you have all this lore of all these different clans going to war with each other. And the fact that it's different factions in Robot Jox adds to the Battletech-esqueness of the storyline, the backplot, and the combat. And if you like Battletech, or if you're at least interested in it, dear listeners, there is actually a Battletech PC video game that is, I have played it, I own it, it's great. And if you're into turn-based combat games, this is going to be one for you. So I'm not sponsored by them, but damn if I would. Believe me, I would. It was a good game. But yeah, this plays into that tabletop strategy kind of gamer mentality.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, that's something that is increasingly popular now. I mean, I know it's gone up and down in popularity over the last number of decades, but it's something even now that is quite, you know, popular and relevant, at least in certain circles. So it's kind of a timeless, you know, a timeless theme, and I think it played pretty well still to this day.
All right. Well, we've gotten to the end of our discussion here, except for one little piece of business. So, Matt, who is your MVP of 1990s Robot Jox?
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to go all in on Michael Aldridge, Tex Conway. I kind of gave that away earlier. I had a ton of fun watching the very, very obvious Mr. America, Texas barbecue and guns and turning out to be the villain. But for me, he was the guy that I really liked watching. He's got to be my MVP.
All right. So my MVP is actually a name that we have not mentioned yet, but we've definitely mentioned the work. David W. Allen, who was the stop motion animator in this film, without the work that he put in, and keep in mind that entire opening scene was actually the test footage that they used to see if they could actually make this film. And that looked fantastic right off the bat. So right from concept, David W. Allen made this film look way better than the budget would have you believe, which is why Robot Jox is still, to this day, in the year of our podcast, 2025, 35 years after the release of the film, still a cult classic. Matt, thank you so much for this. Now, please remind our listeners what you've been up to and where they can find you out there on the interwebs.
They can find me on Instagram at matt.larter. That's Larter. I don't post a whole lot on there. I'm hoping to get to do it a little bit more, but that's where you can find me.
All right, dude. And you know I'm going to be tossing more movies at you.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be back, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right. And for you, our dear listeners, well, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there is no way in a nuclear holocaust that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the page, so every time we put a new post up, 3 posts a week, you get notified. Until next time, he's Matt, I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Crash and burn, everybody. Take care.